And we are back once again. And it's gotten just a bit warm in my car. Just a bit. Theoretically, my car thinks it's 60 degrees out. Right now, inside the car, it's definitely at least 80. Alright, well, even though I already did one rant today, I have not seen, during the brief periods between classes, any real good tech articles to talk today about, except for yet another one about our lovely ISPs. And I've already done a rant on that today, so I'm not going to go there again. Someone really wants to get me to. I'm sure I can be talked into giving another rant on that topic some other time. But today's rant, at least right now, is twofold. One is the fact that we haven't really learned a better way of teaching things. That person wanted to go at the same time as me. I was there a little bit before her, though. Anyways, yeah, as I was saying, we haven't really learned better ways of teaching things to people. I mean, we have in a theoretical sense, but we don't tend to apply them. The original classrooms of the world were usually rather philosophical, almost discussion-like forums in really early history places like Greece, and of course written sources for places like the Library of Alexandria. Those are the earliest ways that people learned more than the basics out of life. But I find that we still seem to teach in the basic same way, more or less. Classes aren't nearly as interactive as they were originally. I still have way too many teachers that simply lecture on a topic and have no idea how to present that. They just fail. I know anyone who's had a class, either high school or college level, is going to know what I'm talking about. These are people that know the subject matter, they understand the subject matter, but the way they present it is stale and uninteresting, and it makes you want to go to sleep. This is not helped by the fact that a lot of those same professors don't understand the benefit of a little bit of distraction. Like, I take notes on a tablet, and I do this because I hate taking paper notes. I will never look at a paper note. It just doesn't happen. I put notes in a notebook, and I will never open the notebook until I go to actually write more notes, which I will, again, never look at. I realized a long time ago it did not make sense for me to do it that way. I didn't have a tablet until a few years ago, obviously, though, because they just weren't there. In fact, when I went back to college after my last job ended, I originally had a laptop that I got with what was a lot of my last funds left over from my previous job. But I thought it would be helpful to have an electronic device. The downside of that is that at the time, unlike what we expect now, the battery life of that laptop was like 2 to 3 hours. And really, it never reached 3 hours. It would get like 2.5. A class is typically an hour and a half to 2 hours long. So 2 hours of battery life means that I get like one class out of it. And that's just kind of pointless. The tablet is also a heck of a lot easier to fit on a desk. I got news for people. It definitely is. I own a Asus Transformer tablet, which means it has a keyboard attachment designed specifically for it with an extra battery and the ability to take like full-sized memory cards that go into it, as well as full-sized USB ports, so you can plug other devices into it if you wanted to. So it becomes kind of like a much smaller laptop when you need it. But unlike a lot of smaller laptop designs, it actually has a usable keyboard, which is something that I love about that. I looked really hard before I chose this one. Now it's really old because I got the 2nd generation of it and they're on like the 7th generation now. So it's pretty much worn out compared to a lot newer ones, but it's still not that bad. Just not cutting edge. But that's what I take notes on. And especially for the dry teachers, the ones who can't keep a topic interesting, they don't understand my use of it. They want to think that I'm like chatting with people and other stuff that are distracting from their not that great lecture to begin with. I mean, they do know the topic, and I am listening to what they're saying, and so I'm getting what they're trying to get to me. They make a big deal out of the fact that they think I'm distracted by the device, when I actually need that little bit of distraction to not sort of zone out on them. I would love if that particular teacher that I just had and actually just complained about that very thing would actually have like an open debate on the subject with me. Because I could literally talk her ear off. The subject matter is kind of interesting. I won't tell you guys what it is unless you really want to know. Because I don't want the teacher to think that I'm, bad-mouthing her or something. So I don't want someone to figure out exactly who I'm talking about based on this video. So hence I won't say what the subject is right now. And that's the only reason I won't. But, there are so many times where you need that little bit of distraction to actually keep your sanity and your focus on a topic. But a lot of teachers want to be the sole focus of attention. And I can sort of understand that. I mean, I've given lectures before. I haven't told any of you out there that are listening to this, unless you happen to know me personally. But I actually used to teach after-school classes to kids. It wasn't a primary part of my job, but I used to work as I was considered the network administrator, but I was doing the job of the director of technology for a charter school. And because I worked at the charter school, I had a chance to help, and I did get paid for it, but not very well. Several times less than actually what I'd make at the job itself, to teach classes after school. Still focused on technology because that's always been sort of a focus of mine. We have to understand and deal with technology because that is the way the world is. That's why I do this. It's all just the same thing, just a different application of it. But I understand the need for some distraction if you're not going to interact with your students. I mean, that was the core principle of like the early way people learned. Philosophical debates were the classic Greek system. You wouldn't just go to hear a lecture from some particular philosopher or mathematician, for example, usually. You would have an interactive debate in a gathering of probably no more than 2-3 dozen people. And this person ahead of me is not going very fast. But, 2 to 3 dozen people, you'd be talking and interacting with one another. All our records of that period show that that's the way we did it. Yet, the non-interactive lecture has become sort of the standard, with classes that are sometimes much, much larger. And I mean, the way we handle education in general is not the same at all. Things like college have very rigid requirements. It's not like the classic Greek system. In the classic Greek system, if you wanted to know more about a subject, you would go to a debate on whatever subject being talked about by, any of the names you might know in that field. There wasn't like a formality to it like we have. There's no rigid tests. There's no homework. You either, interacted and understood the topic, or, and they're now turning off somewhere. Yeah. Onto a dirt road. That's nice. I definitely wouldn't want to drive on that road right now. The car is fine most of the time, but I don't like dirt roads, and I grew up on dirt roads, so that's saying a lot. They just aren't really fun to drive on with a conventional car. You need something that's a little more robust. And this is not designed for that. My LHS is low to the ground. It doesn't have a lot of ground clearance. It does have the big tires it would need, but that's about it. Way too low to the ground, though, and that's the big thing. I have taken this car on a dirt road before, and I just get rocks hitting things underneath the car. Couldn't tell you exactly what those things are, because mostly it's probably the heat shielding under the engine. But, different topic. Back to school. See, I have a teacher in high school who wanted to go back to the classic system. There wouldn't be a rigid formality to his type of education. You have to still conform to expectations, but those expectations are sort of minimal. We would cover all the basic topics in high school, was his idea. And beyond that, students could just go to any class that was offered, and there wouldn't necessarily be a test structure to those classes. It would just be education, raw education, without any of the fluff. You keep going. You've screwed me now, though. There was a nice gap, but this person doesn't know what to do. So, fun. Yeah, and my state really needs to do some education on how you drive on these. That guy was not young. Pretty sure it was a guy. Well, it was a guy and a woman and both in the car, but I think the guy was the one driving. But he's just like staring at me, not able to figure out what the hell to do. But I have a yield. He should know that because it's the same as on his side. But no, he couldn't grasp that concept. He's obviously never driven on one of these types of roundabouts before. And I'm going to close that again. Need to vent some of that hotter air. But yeah, they need some education out there. Maybe some TV commercials, some YouTube video, something. I mean, heck, if they want, I will do a YouTube video on how to go through a roundabout. They want to put them all over the state soon, so it's going to be important, especially for the older crowd, and I'm not really that young anymore. I'm still what I like to think of as young, but not as young as like most of the people I go to school with. Let's put it that way. But yeah, getting back to the subject, he envisioned that, you could go in and out of any class offered. There wouldn't necessarily be tests. It's education for education's sake and not some sort of mandated regime. And there's a lot of people who feel that college is supposed to be about expanding the mind and not this rigid, fixed system where you are supposed to learn some particular topic. And that's actually the way it was when only rich people would ever go to college. And it was the advent of the lower classes, which I certainly am, because I definitely am not made of money. And never have been. I've had to earn everything I got, and I'm not having any jobs or anything else that's ever been handed to me. I've had to make it happen, and most of the time it hasn't. But there's a lot of people that want college, and specifically the bachelor's level of it, to be about expanding the mind and broadening your horizons. And they talk all about that and how modern colleges are vocational, and that's not how college should be. And they seem rather confused in a lot of cases because they seem to have this thought that they didn't go through something that was rigid and hierarchical and didn't keep them from having that sort of mind-broadening experience. But I have to say, outside of the basics, I don't think we should actually have, majors. I don't think that should be a thing. I know I'm probably going to get claimed by quite a few people for that, but I have spent a considerable amount of time in college. I have an associate's degree, and I'm in my senior year of a bachelor's degree. And I actually have gone twice for my bachelor's degree. First time I ran out of money to go because the college simply priced me out of going there. They raised tuition above what I could afford. And I was 3.5 years in, which meant I wasted 3.5 years pretty much, since no one really gives you any credit for it. It was a normal accredited school, but it didn't work really for me, because I got nothing out of it except a lot of debt. A lot of debt. But I really think it probably should be about expanding your horizons and letting you explore into different fields. Especially at that time in your life, I already think that we don't do enough to further the independence of kids earlier on, and the drive to explore their interest areas. We're too regimented into a fixed, you need to learn these things and only these things. A lot of that is because of the way that we handle testing and making sure people do get these things. But you never get to explore what you want to do without doing something like going to college or having experiences outside of school. I mean, the only, vocational activities, to put it bluntly, that most schools tend to offer are athletics. And sure, athletics, you can get a job in that. We have a certain need for athletes, definitely. But they don't have usually any practical training in anything anymore. In my day, we still did have an actual VOTEC system, not actually at my school, but partnered with another school. You could learn things like hairdressing and mechanics. And I think that was pretty much about it, but they had some minimal level of it. You have countries like Germany, which they give you a wide range of educational possibilities, and they try to encourage you into what would be the best fit for you. That might be like a bachelor's degree path, that might be vocational. We don't really give kids any opportunities anymore, and we get this push to go to college, but in college you're forced to basically take a major to graduate. In fact, my college, you cannot graduate without picking a major, which is vocational training. I got news for you. I know some people don't want to think of it that way, but I know my classes, at least within my major, have all been effectively vocational training. Some more esoteric than others, but it's vocational training. It's geared towards you being able to do a particular job and not, a broad range necessarily. I've gone for my first college. They considered it computer information systems, which is also what my associate's is actually in. And that was at an engineering college, though its primary focus is how to program and things related to programming, because that's what they figure you will be doing. In fact, that college worked heavily with local businesses, and he's too short on his turn. But yeah, I went to school the first time around in a city which their primary industries were insurance and banking. So, in the focus to develop skills that would be needed in the community, that is pretty much what they taught, was programming and working in a insurance or banking type of job. When I went back this time, my local college doesn't offer computer information systems, at least not in that form. And originally I went back for computer science because that was about the only technology-focused thing they had. They had no sub-majors in it. Well, when I just started, they had opened a game track, and the only difference between the game track and the general track was that one had actual practical experience making programs, though they both did that, really. It's just one had more theoretical classes on things that, frankly, I don't want to know about. I mean, there are probably some jobs that would use those sorts of skills, but I never really wanted to be a programmer. I can program, but that's not really my job that I want to be doing. And I know some people find that concept a little bit strange. But yeah, now, just as I finish, and I've switched to a business administration degree, which has management information systems. Ironic that. Now, the computer science department comes out with a computer science networking degree, because they decided a networking track would finally be a good thing to have. I've worked in networking for years. I would have preferred that when I came back, but no, that